Good morning and welcome back to the Sage Sorority. I'm your host, Shantel. How are we all doing, guys? I hope you're having an amazing and beautiful week, or at least a very thoughtful one, because today's episode is definitely one of those think with me, walk with me conversations. So get your tea, get your coffee, or just have a cozy little lunch break with me while we discuss a little bit of philosophy 101 and what has been swirling in my brain lately that has even brought me to this point. So the other day, I was on a little bit of a YouTube rabbit hole, as we all do sometimes. And there's an amazing channel, which I highly recommend you guys look into if you're into short video essays or anything of the sort. And it's called Breaking the Patriarchy, I'm positive. And I will link it in the show notes, don't worry. And I was watching one of the videos and something she said really stood out to me. And it was actually about how a lot of religious tools and systems don't really benefit women, or they weren't really built with women in mind. And although that video was not about philosophy at all, and this pod is not about religion, it sparked something in me, and like the brain map was mapping. Because I've been thinking about how much of what we call self-development, especially in the business space, productivity, and the mindset space, has been designed by men. And I believe it's been designed by men partially for men, but I think in their mind, at least for most, for everyone. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, a ton of it is useful. Two of my favorite business books is The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. Yes, very problematic. Not really a fan of him as a person, but I love that book. I read it years ago, and it's one of the business books that I often recommend. And The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. Again, two white men, making a raw business book. But I love those books and I think they're very, very good and I will always recommend them. So a lot of it is useful, but the lens in which it is seen through and spoken through is masculine. Systems, discipline, detachment, control, all can lean very heavily masculine. This is also not that pod. Like, we need both. We are both yin and yang. But what I'm trying to make very clear, and what I will in the episode as well, is that women aren't just like alternative men. Right? Like, that's just not the way it works. We experience life in all of our senses and wisdom differently than a man does. And that's kind of what led me down that kind of thought process and that little rabbit hole of going deeper and wondering what philosophy might really look like through our eyes, and how so much of what we absorb about philosophy and what we love about it is actually still through the eyes, ears, and mouths of men. I hope that wasn't like a word jumble. I promise everything will be clear very soon. So if you're still with me after all of that, let's get into what philosophy really is. Now, I will be the first to say that I think a lot of people hear the word philosophy and it can sound very intimidating. If you weren't one of the girlies that took philosophy in school, it can really sound like something large, existential, top heavy, and you don't really know what it is. Like, You think you know the word and you know the term, but you couldn't really identify it if you had to. And I'm here to tell you that philosophy as a word sounds intimidating, but that's it. It sounds like something people study at university while wearing tweed jackets and quoting Plato at dinner parties. But in reality, philosophy just means the love of wisdom. I know. It's not about knowing all the answers. It is truly about asking better questions. And it's so funny because initially when I was really carving out what I wanted Sage to be, you know, we kind of have an idea of what you think you're going to launch. And then as time goes on, you feel like it kind of morphs into its own thing. And one thing that kept coming up was philosophy. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, one, not a philosopher. Two, like, not talking about philosophers. Like, where does this come from? But again, because I wasn't thinking about what the word actually means, and it truly just means the love of wisdom, which I have running through my veins at every moment of the day. So that's what I mean. Like, don't take it as this big thing that's like separate from you. It's actually a part of all of us. Like I said, it's about asking better questions. Who am I? What do I value? What's real? What's good? How do I live well? Things like that. The real big existential type questions. Those questions are truly the heartbeat of philosophy. And whether or not you studied it formally, I didn't, just so you know. If you've ever sat with heartbreak, questioned your life choices, or asked yourself, what am I even doing with my life? You've already been practicing philosophy. So joke's on you. So traditionally, philosophy is divided into a few main branches. Ethics, which is how we should live and what we owe each other. So ethics, I think most of you know, but I'll happily explain. You're thinking more about your moral choices, the ones that you make every day, telling the truth when it's inconvenient, deciding what's fair in a friendship, or questioning whether success means anything if it costs your integrity. That is ethics. Then we have metaphysics. So what's real and what's beyond the physical? It's the branch that asks, what's the nature of reality? Is there fate? Do we have free will? Why do we exist at all? If you've ever looked up at the sky and felt small or infinite at the same time, that is metaphysics in action. Then we have epistemology, which is how we know what we know. So that is the study of knowledge itself. How do we tell the truth from opinion, fact versus feeling, intuition from evidence? Honestly, guys, I could probably do a whole episode on this because as we know, if you've been on the internet for the last 10-ish years, this study it feels like it's of no more. It feels like it doesn't exist. But in a heavy era of misinformation, epistemology is the skill of discernment, okay? And without even realizing, I talk about that often on the pod because what do I always say? Respond instead of reacting to things. And that's kind of the same thing of fact versus feeling, intuition from evidence. Not to say your feelings don't have any place, but we have to know where our thoughts and our opinions are coming from. Anyways, next there's aesthetics, which we all know. I'm sure if you've been on the internet, again, social media for like the last 10 years, that is what makes something beautiful or meaningful. I feel like that or meaningful part gets chopped off a lot. It's why some songs will move you to tears. It's why certain spaces feel very sacred. It's not just about taste. It's also about the human longing for harmony and what feels right to the soul. It's also what feels right to your eyes, what feels calming, what feels beautiful. Aesthetics. And then finally, logic. So logic is how we reason and make sense of the world. Some lean heavier into logic than others. And I think logic always has its place, but I don't think we can always make decisions from 100% logic, nor do I think that we do. I think we like to believe that we do, but often we don't. It's what helps us connect ideas very clearly, spot contradictions, patterns, and think critically. Every time you step back from a situation to make sense of it, quote unquote, you're using logic. All of these things shape how we move through life, from who we love to how we work, to how we see ourselves. So this is where things get a little complicated because for most of history, philosophy has been written by men and for men. I think modern philosophy and maybe modern personal development is slightly more inclusive in thought, not always in action. But if we look at ancient philosophy, or if we reference what we believe philosophy is when we think of the word, I'm talking Kant, Rousseau, Aristotle. It was definitely written by men for men. If you've ever opened a philosophy book and felt like you could never find yourself in it, you were not wrong. Aristotle called women imperfect men. Jean-Jacques Rousseau thought like a woman's highest virtue was obedience. That was it. And Immanuel Kant, who basically shaped modern moral theory, questioned whether women could even be philosophers at all because he believed we were too emotional. Even that line of thinking that women are too emotional, in 2025, that is still something that is said very freely and that is also accepted. And imagine that this was a point of view from the 1700s. Kant was born in the 1700s and died in the 1800s. So imagine that this is how long this line of thinking has been going on. So when I say it's not the shark in the water, it's the water itself, trust and believe. It's also when people say that philosophy is universal, it's not entirely true, right? It's universal in theory, but not in experience. The quote-unquote rational man that they wrote about wasn't a metaphor. He was literally the man. White, European, educated, and financially supported by someone else doing the domestic labor. That sounds very, very familiar. So when we read their ideas now, absolutely we can still take parts that resonate. I loved Stoicism, and I still do. So trust me, I don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater either. The insights about ethics or virtue or purpose, absolutely. But we do have to zoom out and ask, Who were they thinking about and imagining when they wrote this? Because trust and believe it was not women. I'm not even going to get into the race aspect or even the class aspect, but just as a baseline, it was not women. Of course, like I said, doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it doesn't mean that we discard them altogether. It means we have to engage critically with perspective. We can say, thank you for the framework, but also here's where it fails to see me, and here are the gaps. And anyone who's unwilling to listen to that probably benefits from you seeing things as binary as they do. There's a quote that I once read, or rather like a reframing from the Jungian analyst Marion Woodman. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, when I say Jungian, I mean the work of Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who lived in the early 1900s and founded what is called analytical psychology. Jung's ideas focus less on symptoms and more on the inner world, things like dreams, archetypes, intuition, the subconscious, and the idea of the self as something we're constantly trying to integrate. So when people say something is Jungian, they usually mean it explores the symbolic, emotional, and spiritual sides of being human, not just the logical ones. Jung believed that growth and healing happen when we make peace with all the parts of ourselves, not just the good ones. And that perspective deeply influenced a lot of modern thinkers, including many women who later expanded his ideas through a feminist lens. So now that we have like a little bit of that background, back to the quote by a woman herself. We love to see it. And she said that men often find enlightenment through ego death, but women find it through self-return. And I've heard variables of this online, and I think the easiest, quippiest way to remember it is that a man's work on this earth is to become selfless, and a woman's work on this earth is to become selfish. Listen, don't nickel and dime me about, the whataboutism is not for me, save it. Men are conditioned to individualism, right? Like, this is not up for debate, to dominance, to expansion. Talk to any man you know, watch any movie, like this is what it is. So their spiritual work is to dissolve their ego. There's also an amazing TikTok account called No BS Spirituality. She's also on YouTube as well. I'll link it below. And she made a video not too long ago saying women need to stop believing in like ego death. Like, it doesn't work for us. Again, ties into this whole thing of like, this advice is a baseline, but it actually doesn't serve or is tailored to women. Women, on the other hand, are taught from birth to disappear, right? To be agreeable, to serve, to be kind, to be nice. Our path, contrary to popular belief, and happy to have a friendly debate on this, our path isn't ego death. It's actually self-reclamation, coming back to ourselves, feeling truly like born within, the phoenix rising from the ashes. And that's the crux of why I really wanted to have this intro to philosophy and start this new series to explore philosophy as women, reclaiming the right to think deeply about our own lives, true autonomy, which is one of the strongest backbones of the Sage Sorority. I always say, I want the girls to do whatever the girls want to do, you know, as long as they don't bring harm to themselves or others. That is the idea, in a very like casual way of putting it. And I think because for so long, even our wisdom traditions have asked us to shrink in order to be good, in order to be holy, in order to be loved. And I really do believe that women are having their own collective awakening and are saying, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of done with that. I also want to make myself clear that women were always there. Okay? Like, let's just full stop sentence. Women were always there. Even if the history books acted like they weren't. Another good discussion point that I think gets lost in the women working conversation is that historically, as long as humans have been on this earth, women have always worked. The only difference is that women then and now, not all, but many, their work is not compensated and their work is undervalued, and oftentimes their work is invisible. Women philosophers always existed. They were there. History and history books just didn't document them in the way that they froth at the mouth to document men. Again, this is not me not liking men. This is not me bashing men. These are facts. So like I said, women were always there. They just weren't invited into the canon. There was Hypatia of Alexandria, an astronomer and philosopher in ancient Egypt, who was murdered for teaching science and reason in a world that feared both. There was Mary Wollstonecraft, who argued that reason belongs equally to men and women and that education was the foundation of equality. There was Hannah Arendt, who wrote about power and moral responsibility. And she said how evil can thrive in ordinary people who stop thinking critically. Hannah passed away in 1975, and I'm telling you, she couldn't have been more bang on. The world is infinitely more messed up now than when she passed away, and it's like, girl, you were incredibly onto something. Then, of course, we have Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde, who taught that love and rage and identity are not distractions from philosophy, that they in fact are philosophy. And we're so fortunate to have more contemporary voices like Amiya Srinivasan, who explores desire and consent and power, things that truly shape modern womanhood but are rarely treated as academic. So when I say that this episode is an introduction, what I really want to explain is that it's an invitation. Because philosophy is not a dead subject, it is alive every single time a woman questions the rules that she was told to follow. Every time you step back and assess something, philosophy is there. The reason why I think it's so poignant to bring this up now is because we live in a time where we are bombarded with opinions and algorithms and self-help sound bites, and philosophy truly slows that down. And it asks you to think for yourself, not just react. And you guys know how I feel about that. And for women, if we look at things from a historical point of view and we look at life as a very long journey, that is incredibly radical because we have been trained to internalize everyone else's opinions before forming our own. We've been told to be open-minded, but not difficult. You got to be soft, but not slow. And you have to be confident, but you cannot be arrogant. Philosophy truly gives you permission to step back and say, what do I actually believe? What do I actually think? And what do I actually want? Not what my parents teach me, not what TikTok says is cool, not what society rewards, but what feels true and intrinsic to me. Even the smallest act of philosophical inquiry, journaling about your values, questioning why you want what you want, or noticing when something feels off and investigating, that is you doing the work that ancient philosophers spent lifetimes on. Look at you. And if you're in one of those chapters where you're truly questioning everything, your direction, your purpose, your next move, and you just want someone to help you brain map and think it through in a grounded, human way, I'm offering one-to-one coaching. You can book a single session or a short series. All the details are in the show notes. If you've been in your head about what's next or you're craving deeper clarity about who you're becoming, I would love to hold space for that conversation. Sometimes, honestly, you don't need a 5-year plan. You just need one honest hour. Talk soon. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, great girl, where do I even start? Here are some really easy ways to build philosophical thinking into your everyday life. So number one is ask why twice. And if twice seems excessive to you, then just start asking why. This is something that I think I'm really interested in, like internally. Like I love to question things. I'm very curious about things. And I will always tell you guys, and I'll repeat it here, that I don't have all the answers. I really don't. I haven't read all the books. I haven't gone to all the workshops. I haven't listened to all the lectures. Like I don't have all the answers. But one thing I do have, and it's something that I've always had, is that I'm always willing to engage in the conversation, to engage in the debate, to peel it back a little bit and learn a little bit more. And I think that that is a really, really good quality to have, regardless of the topic at hand. The first why will always get you a surface answer, right? But the second one gets you closer to the truth. For example, why do I want this promotion? Because it'll give me more money. It's like, okay, but why do I need more money? Because XYZ. Or because it'll make me feel accomplished. Okay, why do I need that to feel accomplished? Like, that is truly where the gold is. And it's something I've even encouraged women in my own life to do, especially in the realm of like love and relationships. It's like, why do you want this? Okay, dig deeper, dig deeper. And once you get to the crux of major decisions, it is truly like a guiding light that you can never turn off because you're never afraid to go inward and ask yourself the tough questions. Number two, read slowly. Pick one book, one essay, one paragraph even, and just sit with it. I know that information is literally being fed to us like a fire hydrant every minute of every day, but I'm asking you guys to just sit with things for a little bit longer. Pick anything. And if you haven't read anything in a long time, start there and just read a page. Sit with it. Read it again. Really absorb it. Philosophy is not about consumption. It is about digestion. How many times have you read something and you're like, I don't even know what I just read? Like, go back. Read it 40 times if you have to. I will also say there's a book that I'm going to recommend. It's called The Philosophy Book, Big Ideas Simply Explained. And they actually make these books on a number of different topics. I have the economics one, and it's visual, so it's not like a textbook or anything. And it truly explains something like front to back in a really easy, digestible way. These are the perfect books. Even if you have children, this is a book that they can like grow up with. It's almost like an encyclopedia. And it truly like goes from start to finish. But it gives you like a really good base for various different topics. There's also a smaller book called Philosophy 101. Again, these are books that they just create on random topics and kind of expand it. Highly, highly, highly recommend if you are a little bit more curious about philosophy. Number 3, journal with depth. Okay, this is not performance. You don't have to have the pretty pens or even journal prompts just for a second. Just ask questions that don't have neat answers, that maybe don't even have answers at all, and just free flow your thoughts onto the paper. What does freedom look like to you? What do you owe yourself in this life? Where have you been outsourcing your own thinking? Just journal your thoughts, pure and simple. Number 4, pay attention to your inner contradictions. This is a really good one because this is something that we as humans all have. And I do think it's worth investigating, not to shame yourself, but just to be aware. Philosophers love paradoxes. It is a very common thread amongst them. And that's because life is full of them, right? You can want stability and still crave adventure. You can love someone and also know that they're not right for you. Holding both truths in life, because it's full of duality without collapsing necessarily into one or the other, that is also philosophy. And finally, have conversations that truly stretch you. Curiosity is also incredibly magnetic. It's attractive. Certainty is annoying and overrated, especially if you really haven't thought it through. Have conversations with people that inspire you and have conversations that stretch you. I'm telling you, you will never be the same. So if philosophy ever felt off limits or confusing or really out of touch to you before, I really, really genuinely hope that today opens some sort of door. Because at its core, philosophy is not about big words or even like academic debates. It's just about attention to detail in our lifetime, paying attention to your life, paying attention to your choices, paying attention to your thoughts before they become staunch beliefs. You know what I mean? Maybe you'll notice that philosophers are hidden in your own life. The friend who maybe questions everything, your grandma who always gave you like little nuggets of truth, maybe a writer who really puts language to things that you've always felt. That is all part of the lineage as well. And honestly, as women, I believe we've always been philosophers. We've always just been doing it. In kitchens, in diaries, in whispers, in community, in salons, in living rooms, over our children while we do their hair, and in poems, etc., etc. And I truly believe that this is a huge reckoning for women to do it like we always have, but just very much out loud. So if this episode resonated with you at all, please leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It really, really, really helps the show, guys, and it helps more women find the Sage Sorority and join the conversation. I am also going to launch a WhatsApp community chat. I'm going to link it in my link tree once it gets done, but this is something that I've been thinking about doing for a very long time. I am part of a few WhatsApp groups based in London and globally, and I absolutely love them. And I have had the idea for a Sage community since before I even had the podcast. Like, I think I saved that name as like a channel on WhatsApp, and I just never did anything with it. So I want to create a group chat on the Sage Sorority to keep the conversation going and to also expand on things that are just relevant to women like us and for us. I really, really, really think good group chats are top tier. But anyways, that will be coming soon. If you're interested, just DM me and I will send you the link directly, but it is definitely coming soon. Also, don't forget that you can always send in an anonymous question or topic for the future. Ask a Sage episodes. I did one last week. Dating, friendship, work, purpose, anything in between. Happy to help and happy to chime in. The link is always in the show notes for you guys. So until next week, keep asking the questions, keep thinking deeply, and keep trusting that your wisdom is already within you. Love you guys so, 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 so much. Have a beautiful day and have a beautiful week. I will talk to you next time. Bye.